Do you wonder if you're the best version of yourself? This is the question we seek to answer in this podcast. We reveal information that helps you recover your health and become resilient. Modern life makes us fragile. Our diet, lifestyle, and environment set us up for failure. We do not accept this. We seek optimization. We strive to become dynamic. Hey, what's going on? Dr. Chris here. Today I'm going to be talking about recovery. And is it the thing you're missing in your training? So if you've been training hard and you're just plateauing, you can't get that number you want, you're not running faster or whatever it is, or maybe you've been training a lot and you've gotten sick or injured, or maybe you have that nagging injury. I have a buddy who had a tennis elbow for like a year. He couldn't shake it, and he was training maybe too much or not recovering enough. That's what this podcast is all about. So remember, the equation to get good at something, to adapt, is stress, or think of it as the stimulus, plus recovery equals the adaptation. So stress plus recovery equals adaptation. Right? So we put the stressor in, working out, sprinting, whatever it is you're trying to get better at, lifting heavy weight. Then you need to recover, and then you get the adaptation you want. What so many people miss is they don't recover enough or don't prioritize the recovery. You should think of it as you train to recover. That's where the magic happens, right? So you tear down the muscle, and when you're sleeping, it rebuilds. That's the recovery component. So chances are, if you've got that nagging injury, you're getting sick a lot or something like that, you're probably missing the boat on recovery. And there's more to it than just sleep. That's what I really want to dig into. So I hear this a lot. I was playing basketball. I strained my Achilles. I rested it for like 2 weeks, and nothing's changed. And I always say, well, doing nothing changes nothing. Recovery is not meant to be just rest. So I kind of break it into two different thoughts, active and passive recovery. So passive recovery is what it sounds like. You're not really doing much, right? So that, by far away, the number one thing is sleep. Prioritizing sleep, not just the amount of hours you're sleeping, but also the depth of sleep. And if you haven't done some form of sleep tracker, you should, because you'll be surprised you're probably not sleeping as much as you think you are. You almost have to subtract an hour just for disturbances at night, getting up to go to the bathroom, or if you have a dog, wakes you up, just shifting in bed. So you can kind of subtract an hour of the time that you think you've been asleep for. Depth of sleep, too, is super vital. So this is one that I think that a lot of people miss the boat on. The big thing here is getting your core temperature down. So most people are sleeping way too hot, 74 degrees or something like that. You should be sleeping at 68 degrees or lower. I personally sleep at 62 degrees, and that has really improved the depth of my sleep. Also, getting light out of the bedroom as much as you can. Your bedroom should be a cave. All that little LEDs, either tape them up or unplug the things that you don't need. Get the blackout curtains. You want dark and cold. The other piece of that is knowing what not to do for the things that inhibit your sleep. So that's caffeine late in the day, eating too late at night. Alcohol for many will really interrupt your sleep. The blue lights at night, that will inhibit your circadian rhythm. So staying in bed and watching a violent movie at 10 o'clock at night is probably not a good idea. You don't want something stimulating. You should be winding down. So outside of sleep, what else is passive? This could be laying in a hammock and reading a book. It could be using a TENS unit or electric stimulation. It could be getting a massage. It could be a cold plunge or sauna. Let me explain more about that in a second. It's all the stuff that makes you feel very parasympathetic. So the cold plunge and sauna, those are kind of funny ones because they can kind of be active or passive depending on you, really. So if you've never done a cold plunge, then it could be hard to do and a little bit sympathetic. Then it becomes a little more active. But if you're more adapted, like for me, I've been doing it for years. Sitting 50 degrees is nice. It's pleasant, especially in Florida. So think of like getting in a cooler pool on a hot day. It's just refreshing. It feels good. That's very parasympathetic. Now, 40 degrees is still challenging for me. So it's enough to kind of take my breath away, and then I settle into it. So that, to me, I consider a little bit more active because you might start to shiver a bit. So it's a little more active. And active is just like it sounds. You're just being a little more active, things that might get your heart rate up a little bit, but still on the parasympathetic side of things. Again, it depends where you are with your own health and your own cardio output. It could be like stretching, foam rolling. It could be, a harder cold plunge, or doing contrast therapy, back and forth from sauna to cold. It could be going for a walk. Walking in nature in particular is extremely good for your health. Really parasympathetic activity. Going out for a light bike ride or a light swim, so maybe the heart rate goes up a little bit, and then it settles down and goes below the baseline. That's the hormetic stress. One of the things to think about with active recovery is blood flow. Right, so that's a big thing. Your tissues need oxygen. Oxygen's attached to blood, so you want perfusion to the tissues, especially if you've been training hard. Those tissues need to rebuild, and they need the oxygen. So when do you use what? Well, I think in general terms, most people should have a little bit of both planned into their recovery. Some passive, obviously the sleep is huge, and then some active. It also just depends on how sore you are, right? If you just went and had a massive workout and you've got a lot of DOMs, going for a light bike ride or rowing actually in particular is really good. That is going to really help settle down the DOMs because you're going to get perfusion. I think it's a very rare situation where I tell people to just do nothing. I can't even think of a time, outside of like a serious injury where you just have to immobilize a joint. Even still, I'm going to try to get you to move something else. And that's an important point. So say you're in a boot, maybe you tore your Achilles and you can't move your foot for a while. That doesn't mean you should do nothing at all. You can still get on a bike and just use the arms, right? Or you could get on a rower and just keep one foot off, the injured foot off the rower. Maybe put on a slider and use the other leg and two arms. First of all, you don't want to lose your cardio, but just moving any of the joints helps lymphatic flow, right? Because the lymphatic system's all one system. So just because you can't move your foot doesn't mean you can't move the rest of your body. And moving the rest of the body will actually help with the swelling even in that ankle. Our bodies are really meant to move. We're not good at sitting still. I mean, sleep for so many people is so difficult because the body's just not good at being still. In fact, we used to put people on bed rest. You don't really see that anymore. You know why? Because when you put people, especially older folks, on bed rest, they die, right? The blood stops moving and you get clots, and those are killers. Sometimes people get clots on airplanes just because they're sitting there for too long not moving. Anyway, so in planning how you want to recover, I think looking at a metric called HRV, heart rate variability, is a really good idea. And that way you can see how you respond to certain activities. So heart rate variability is a measure of how your nervous system is doing. If you do something very hard, you can expect next day that your recovery is going to be poor, and then you should do things to try to elevate that, at least to get you back to baseline. So let's say you went for a 5K run and it was challenging for you, and the next morning you look at your HRV and it's tanked, and then maybe you do some walking, maybe a light bike ride, maybe some breath work and contrast therapy. And then the next day, if your HRV is still pretty low, maybe that was too much active recovery. But my personal bias is to always try to build resilience. So it's not just about how much can you lift or how fast can you run. It's how fast can you get back to baseline after doing something difficult, after doing lots of different activities that are difficult, not just the one thing you're good at. That to me is a sign of resilience. That's the idea of physiologic flexibility, to be able to be dynamic, to be able to handle multiple things. So we have multiple systems of the body that you can challenge, and they confer benefit to the other systems. So in other words, if you build up your tolerance to CO2, you can improve your muscular endurance. How does that work? So it's pretty fascinating. So say you are doing some breath work and you do a breath hold. Now your CO2 is building up in your bloodstream. That makes your blood, the arterial gases, more acidic. Just like when you're working out and you get that burn, well, that's literally acid that's building up. So as you improve your tolerance to CO2, you improve your tolerance to your pH dropping, you can work out literally longer. Another example of these sort of domains or homeostatic regulators of the body are your temperature regulation and your blood sugar regulation. So if you improve your tolerance to cold, you can improve your insulin sensitivity. Because I've experimented this on myself. When you go in the cold plunge, if you're wearing a CGM, you will see your blood sugars drop. So the longer you can stay in a cold plunge, the more it drops your blood sugar. And over time, you become more insulin sensitive. Anyway, I think resilience is a good goal for anybody. And how do you track your resilience? Well, it's how fast you return to baseline in your heart rate variability or your recovery scores. And how do you do that? Through smart planning in your active and passive recovery. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are meant to do. What does this mean? It means exposing yourself to difficult situations so you become resilient. If you need help building resilience, check out our flagship program called Physiologic Flexibility. This is a 3-month do-it-yourself program that teaches you how to maximize your homeostatic regulators, such as your pH, blood glucose, O2 and CO2 tolerance, and temperature. We give you specific action items through the program with the goal of becoming anti-fragile. If you want to become the inspiration for your friends and family, this is the program for you.